Are you ready? Yes. Okay, let's do it. Okay, good evening, listeners. This is Tuesday evening after 7 p.m. and this is Bless Radio, and it's the spiritual discussion program. It's a bit later than usual. Normally start at 6, so tonight we are starting after 7. Welcome, listeners. I'm Saad in Bromley in southeast London. Obviously it's dark now and quite chilly, just about 3 degrees. And with me tonight, as usual, is Gregory. Gregory, how are you? Where are you? And how's the weather where you are?
Well, here in Brussels, in Belgium,
Yes.
weather is just like what you have in the UK. That
Very good.
chilly.
Very good. So, welcome, listeners. As I said, this is the spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Uprushin. And we have a new topic every week. And being Christmas, the topic we have selected is Happy Christmas, the gift of love. Happy Christmas, the gift of love. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. And I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Uprushin is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the readers are again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the 5 senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Uprushin. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. Dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic we're discussing tonight, as you know, Christmas is coming, so the topic is Happy Christmas, the gift of love. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us is our UK number. It is 079 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. Gregory, I did some research on Christmas, and I looked in Wikipedia, and I just want to read out this text from Wikipedia. Christmas is an annual festival commemorating the birth of Jesus Christ, observed primarily on December the 25th as a religious and cultural celebration among billions of people around the world. A feast central to the Christian liturgical year. It is preceded by the season of Advent or the Nativity fast, and initiates the season of Christmastide, which historically in the West lasts 12 days and culminates on the 12th night. Christmas Day is a public holiday in many countries and is celebrated religiously by a majority of Christians, as well as culturally by many non-Christians, and forms an integral part of the holiday season organized around it. The traditional Christmas narrative, the Nativity of Jesus, delineated in the New Testament, says that Jesus was born in Bethlehem in accordance with messianic prophecies. When Joseph and Mary arrived in the city, the inn had no room, and so they were offered a stable where where the Christ child was soon born, with angels proclaiming this news to shepherds, who then spread the word. For Christians, believing that God came into the world in the form of man to atone for the sins of humanity, rather than knowing Jesus' exact birth date, it is considered to be, I won't read that, that's not so relevant, but I'll leave that out. So, and Christmas is considered to be the primary, I'll leave that out as I said, sorry, I'll leave that out. The celebratory customs associated in various countries with Christmas have a mix of pre-Christian, Christian, and secular themes and origins. Popular modern customs of the holiday include gift giving, completing an Advent calendar or Advent wreath, Christmas music, caroling, viewing a nativity play, an exchange of Christmas cards, church services, a special meal, and display of various Christmas decorations, including Christmas trees, Christmas lights, nativity scenes, garlands, wreaths, mistletoe, and holly. In addition, several closely related and other interchangeable figures, known as Santa Claus, Father Christmas, Saint Nicholas, and Christ King, are associated with bringing gifts to children during the Christmas season, and have their own body of traditions. Because gift giving and many other aspects of Christmas festival involve heightened economic activity, the holiday has become a significant event and a key sales period for retailers and businesses. So I read this out, listeners, from the text in Wikipedia. It may not be fully spiritual, but I think it sums up the Christmas festival sort of in a broad way. Now, Gregory, we know our program is a spiritual discussion program, so we look at it from that angle. I just want to ask you, Gregory, is there anything you want to say in what I have, said in the text that I've written out and said from the Wikipedias?
First, it is best to consider the facts. Secondly, it must be clearly realized that one key fact is that a child was born, and that the mission of that child was purely spiritual. All other things are the razzmatazz woven around it. So these are the three key facts.
Thank you for that, Gregory. That's why I read this text, Gregory, because I know that's where the world is in today's time, and it looks, from what you have just said, we are far away from the spiritual realization of Jesus's birth and mission. And this show is an opportunity for us, let's say, to discover the spiritual side, or get the spiritual meaning, you can say, of Christmas. Now, what I want to do, Gregory, I also want to refer to the Bible and read out from there, you could say, the Christmas story. So I'm going to read, actually, this is from Matthew, chapter 1, verse 18 onwards, and is titled The Birth of Jesus Christ. So just to repeat, this is the birth of Jesus Christ from Matthew in the New Testament, chapter 1, verse 18 onwards. This is how the birth of Jesus Christ came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be with child through the Holy Spirit. Because Joseph, her husband, was a righteous man and did not want to expose her to public disgrace, he had in mind to divorce her quietly. But after he had considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, because he will save people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will be with child, and will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded, and took Mary home as his wife. But he had no union with her until she gave birth to a son, and he gave him the name Jesus. I'm just going to stop there, Gregory, because I do want to read more, but I just want to not get read too far forward that we can't discuss what we have read. So, Gregory, this is from the Bible now. Let's say it's not quite the full story of the birth of Jesus, but that's let's say the beginning of it. So, or let's say, yeah, a part of the story. So, again, Gregory, is there anything you'd like to say about those words?
Most of the time, it's not helpful to take part expressions and start commenting on them. For that which is of spirit, therefore that which is beneficial to the maturity of the human personality, which is of spirit, only the intuitive meanings. It means that most of these expressions must be grasped intuitively, not the superficial interpretations of these expressions. What you have just read is quite basic. Of course, these expressions, when examined very carefully, seem to contain inconsistencies. But that is not the key. The key here is the works that these newborn, or the tasks which this newborn needs to accomplish. All other things are just human vanity woven around it.
Thank you for that. So yes, I hear what you say, because when you hear a story, it sounds very interesting, and you can say with whatever details we hear about it, but that doesn't get to the crux of the issue, which is why Jesus came, and what was his mission, and what he actually did. So you are right. In what I've read, doesn't relate to that. It's just a storytelling so far. So thank you for that.
However, if you listen carefully, Matthew referred to part of the task, which is that he will save many of from their sins.
Right.
So that is why one saying, when there are too many expressions bunched together and so many interpretations, it contains inconsistencies. It would be good to consider why he came, what happened at the time he came, and how he proceeded. These are the things which will be beneficial. This is what the human personality must take away, rather than the razzmatazz, which is woven around it.
Okay, so let's go, as you say, let's do that. So why did Jesus come?
Again, from the bits you have read, it is stressed there, the task, that through his activities, he will save many of their sins. There are not many others in which such expression was given, like you read in Matthew. So the takeaways is what one is referring to, because that is the key. Many who incarnate on earth come first in order to experience, or in order to redeem themselves through further experiences. But in this particular case, that was not it. It was said, he will save many.
Thank you. So, one thing we know that Jesus taught us was love, about love, and that's why I actually gave this topic called, for our discussion tonight, is titled "Happy Christmas - the Gift of Love." And people think or many Christians, let's say, believe that Jesus came to die and take away our sins, and that thereby save us, because we know Jesus is called the Messiah, the Savior. So was that his mission, to come and die and take away our sins? Was the sacrifice of love?
In the first instance, the expression love must be understood, albeit intuitively. Not the way human personalities just consider words without having a deeper picture. What is love? When human spirits consider only their ability to take without giving. From his birth, which is an act of love, human personalities were granted the opportunity. It's as if something had been given to them. Whenever something is given to you, you make use of it such that it will be of benefit to you and also to those around you or your environment. Only when there is a balance in the giving and the taking will there be harmony. For on the one hand, love lies in giving, but in making use of it, in accordance with the will of the giver, it should bring one benefits. In that particular case, it will now harmonize with the will of the giver. So we have a giving out and also a making use of, which brings benefits to all. That is the key. But there must be a balance. Whenever there is no balance, then catastrophe is bound to follow. In the case of Christ, he always gave. But we ourselves are supposed to make use of the examples of the teaching he gave to benefit us spiritually. What is of benefit spiritually does not necessarily mean it will be of pleasure, as many do expect. For that which is spiritual calls for the strongest exercise of activities in one's inner nature. It calls for the strongest activity, not only internally, but also externally. In such a way, the body and the spirit or the soul are strengthened. That is what is required. And that is why that love was given.
Thank you for that explanation, Gregory, and picture. It's clear that people see things in general, let's say, love as just, you could say, taking things, but it has, and but it is giving and taking. It's not one-sided. And people think about, for example, unconditional love. Between the mother and a child, or basically mother towards a child, her child, and and thinking similarly between the Almighty and His creation, or us, let's say, in this case. But then, what are we meant to do? If we're receiving these blessings, there's something is sort of implied that we have to do in return. And let's say people don't ask, what is it that I need to do for this to receive this, to have the benefit of these blessings? Gregory, one thing I can see is we can do what Jesus did. He gave love, so we can give love to our fellow man. That's what I can see. And then, then you could say the world will be a happier place. Gregory, when we give some love or whatever we give, should it be with any expectation in it? Or should we just not bother or think about that?
Whoever receives has the duty to make use of that which he himself or herself has received in accordance with the will of the giver. That itself is an expectation. That means you receive the power, you receive the gifts, you make use of these gifts in accordance with the will of the giver. So, of course, there must be some expectation, but not the earthly type of expectation, but for the spiritual type of expectation, in that whoever receives of the power, of the love, must make use of these in accordance with the will of the giver, which will are the manifestations of the laws of creation. Only then will it bring benefit. Part of it is in making use of these to strengthen oneself. That means to achieve inner clarity. And in achieving inner clarity, to ensure one is able to assist others in also achieving inner clarity. In that pattern, because he himself has received and has been of help to his neighbor, he himself or herself will receive more. That is how it is. It doesn't mean the person whom you have helped to achieve clarity must reciprocate immediately. Although spiritually, whoever has then received from you with the right attitude will show such gratitude, not necessarily in the material sense as expected by some. If most of the expressions which many comes across here on earth, if these expressions are if one is able to look behind the impressions, the intuitions behind these expressions, then one would see a weaving in creation where that law of balance is clearly visible. Therefore, there is no need to have such earthly expectation that because you have given, something to a fellow human spirit, that person must give you something back. In this particular case, one is referring to spiritual gifts, which is what the Almighty gave through the birth of Christ.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. We talked about expectation, and you might think, oh, if I give you, I know you said this is not earthly, you're talking about, it's spiritual you're talking about. So, but let's say, look at it in one earthly way, that let's say I do you a favor in one way, and then sort of you have an expectation to have a favor returned. And then when you think about balance of giving and taking, you're thinking, okay, I gave you so much. I know it could be in, let's say, one way, and then to balance it, I need the other person has to return. Okay, it could be something different, sort of also to match that. And but when you think about it, Gregory, in reality, you can't really measure these things because they may not be measurable, in that way. You can't actually do that. And I just want to ask another thing, Gregory, on expectation. No two people think the same, and so one man, he gives something, and the other person returns. When the person returns, the first person might think, oh, that's not fully what he, it's like doesn't meet his expectation. So, what I'm thinking, Gregory, is people might become unhappy, or the first person might become unhappy. Oh, I didn't get what I, fully what I, gave. So, how does this balancing work, Gregory? Is it according to the individual expectation that because somebody could have you can always have misunderstanding in life, because some people, let's say, give it in a quiet manner, others are more, let's say, more public, if I can say that way. So how does if I can say, how do things do balance up? Is it
in the first instance, there is a confusion between that which is of spirit and that which is material. In the discussions we are engaged in, at the beginning we stress it is that which is of spirit that we are concerned with. But inevitably, that which is of material, which is covetous, is brought in. That is not what is discussed here. That which is of spirit benefits the spirit, strengthens the spirit, and subsequently strengthens the body. That which is of material, which you just mentioned, in which there is intellectual calculation, that is not what Christ was referring to. Human personalities can do as they wish with the goods or whatever they think they have. That is very different. And because it is that of the spirit that we wish to discuss, that which is of material is put aside. For when you consider that the spiritual and the material live side by side here on earth, that question was put before Christ. Should we pay taxes to Caesar? In which he took the coin. Unto Caesar, give it to Caesar. Unto the Lord, give it to the Lord. With that which is spiritual, which permeates everything, the expectations are spiritual. Expectations are spiritual, not judged by man, but by the laws of creation through which all came into existence. And it permeates everything. That which is of material, in which is necessary, most of the time, these things are judged by the expectations of men, which are varied. In that particular case, it is difficult to know what one person expects from another. And that is why you have all the inequalities, because you have different people at different stages of maturity.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for this answer. Even though I know you had said something already earlier, by sort of repeating a similar question, the issue is highlighted further. And let's say, and when you give the answer again, let's say with some extra words there, let's say you're sort of hammering into us to get a deeper meaning, which may not be obvious in the first time of saying. So thank you for, presenting it again and highlighting it. There's more I would like to say, but I think what you have pointed to there, Gregory, is that the spiritual and the earthly, as they say, are far apart as heaven and earth. And we just have to know when we are discussing something, where is the discussion? Is it on the spiritual side or is it on the earthly side? So thank you for that. Dear listeners, you are listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. And it's tonight, we're doing from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. But usually we are 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. And the aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abrushi. And if you want to know more about the Grail Message, or want to get a copy of the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight, it is Happy Christmas, the gift of love. Happy Christmas, the gift of love. You are welcome to join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 079 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And just to let you know, we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Bless Radio 1, the number 1.com. Also on YouTube, go to youtube.com and type in the search box again, Bless Radio 1, again the number 1, space, live stream. That's to listen to the live show. You can listen to the recording of the show the next day on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, the number 1, space, Grail Message, space, the topic of the show, which tonight again is Happy Christmas, the gift of love. Now, Gregory, we are in the pandemic, and again, it's in the news, and you may say this is not spiritual discussion, but well, let's say some people are saying we can't celebrate Christmas like we have done in the past. With the pandemic, we can't meet or whatever it is, that, family get-togethers and things like that. And I want to ask you, Gregory, we are living on the earth, and should, what exactly, how should we really celebrate Christmas? Let me say it this way. The discussions that are happening in the news, you can say, the word Christmas is bandied about all the time. Christmas is cancelled. I know these are like sensationalist type of headlines, which the journalists are very good at, bringing up left, right, and centre. But that's what the public also is, taking part in. And so I just want to get really to the bottom of this. What is really, we've talked about, the Christ's mission, but how should at this time to celebrate the birth of Christ, how should it be celebrated?
Any activity which is not permeated with the intuition is utterly valueless and useless. So in this unique particular case, which is the birth of Christ, it must be conceived very carefully in one's intuition. The reason for his incarnation. That does not mean that people must band together in multitudes. But what it means is that any personality who wishes to celebrate must celebrate this unique event intuitively. Else, even if they had spent the whole of their lives or their earth lives in the place of worship, or in church, or in whatever gathering, and the impression does not touch on one's intuition, that means it is not intuitively perceived in all its depths, then it brings no benefit, but is only more like a sounding cymbal, noisy to the neighborhood. For wherever there is no spiritual benefit, it becomes shallow, becomes just mere earthly things which are completely meaningless.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. I just want to explore that further about intuitively experiencing Christmas. Does it mean, you said people might spend time in the church worshipping or wherever, worship, not necessarily in the church. Let's say that's one way, or others are having a meal together as family, and they're calling it Christmas get together somehow. So when on the surface it looks like these are earthly activities, Gregory. So when you say spiritually, I've exactly forgotten the word you said. Is it intuitively sensed? Did you say? I've quite
yes.
Right. So I'm just trying to understand that. So is that meaning with emotion, Gregory? Intuitively sensed with your heart, or is it the recognition of why Jesus Christ came, his mission? Is it because I must say what you see, what they're talking about the news, like parties and even singing and other things, it's more, seems to be more for their own social benefit rather than the actual commemoration of Jesus' birthday, if I'm honest. It's more, and you could say, an excuse for their own social benefit, rather than the actual meaning of what Christmas is about. So,
from the earliest beginning, the celebration of Christmas has been done wrongly. Christ himself did not celebrate Christmas. So, is there any record of him getting together with others to celebrate his birthday on Christmas Day? No. These things came later. And it only came when they now reflected that there were three kings who brought gifts. These three kings from the Orient who brought gifts and failed woefully. Even they themselves precipitated the wrong concept of what Christmas should be, because they had totally the wrong concept of what it is to be present at a time when a gift was granted to mankind. Here, the three kings, they brought their so-called gift of gold, of incense, and whatever. Were they expecting Christ or expecting Joseph and the wife Mary to prepare trinkles or bling-bling for Christ to wear? That was not the aim. While they were led to the manger, their task fully was, through their activities, to protect this child whom Lord has given to mankind to show the way, to protect. For when a gift is given to you, it only means in accordance with the laws of creation, to make use of it, to protect it, such that these gifts will also bring benefit to others. What did they do? They came, they dropped their so-called gifts, which spiritually were worthless, and they turned their back on the child whom they themselves were supposed to protect. Maybe they were not aware that Herod was killing in silence the firstborn child of the people of Israel at that time. Very sadly, this has been the continuation. This same error still persists when people come and drop their gifts and they go away and they say they have celebrated Christmas. In fact, it has not been Christmas they have been celebrating, but just following their social exchange of gifts. For the celebration of Christmas is not solely the exchange of gifts or dropping of gifts, but in following the word which Christ has taught, in the consideration, in the kind volition, in loving their neighbor as themselves, not just forwardly, but throughout perpetually, which is different from what happens when people go out in the gathering and say all sort of things which they don't mean. So, from a spiritual standpoint, it is very different from what many are doing right now. They are celebrating for themselves, not in accordance with the will of the Almighty, who granted that an inborn son be given to men such that through his activities he will show the way to men how they have to live in order that they will return back home to paradise, which is their spiritual home.
Thank you for that, Gregory. The story of those three kings, or wise men, so-called, and magi, also they're known as, they considered Jesus to be a king or to become a king, and they came to honor that. And as you've said, their role was more than that. But for some reason, they didn't notice it or didn't realize that, and left Jesus. And
the thing is that if, strictly speaking, they had considered Jesus to be a king, then even from their earthly expectations, is the king not supposed to be protected? So it was highly superficial. And that is the stress one has put in this thing. Unless the earthly activities is seen from a more intuitive, that means on a more spiritual level, then it is completely meaningless. If you have a king, or you acknowledge that this personality is a king, then your activities towards that person must be that of reverence and respect and protection. Means you yourselves, you will not proceed to do anything which will give the wrong impression of what becoming a king is. But that was not what they did. They only came, dropped their whatever, and turned back, leaving the child unprotected. So the right concept must be borne in mind in the celebration of Christmas. Because what happens nowadays, you come, you share cards, you share meals, and immediately it all ends there and forgotten. Leaving your fellow man with the challenges, not only with the everyday challenges, with the challenges in life, not showing the same fervor, the same concern, which Christ kept stressing, to love thy neighbor as thyself.
thank you for that answer, Gregory. You just led me to my next question, which is about charity. You know, at Christmas, many people volunteer for many causes and help, in quotes, the needy, like homeless, and many other causes, sort of in honor of Christmas, you know, cooking food for the homeless, or, you know, provide, well, I'm not quite sure about shelter, but some sort of comfort at this time. And then which is of course a good thing to help a fellow human being, but in my head immediately I wonder, well, if, yes, you're doing it in quotes in honor of Christmas, but then this issue doesn't disappear after Christmas, it's still there, you know. So, you know, what is the point of that type of help if some, you know, if they're still going to be having, the people will still have the problem, that thing. At the same time, I don't want to neglect the point that somebody has given something, of their free, from their heart, you can say, out of love. So I'm just thinking, Gregory, in this type of, you could call it support or help when people at Christmas, is that right? I can't think of the right, how to say it, but is that the right thing to do, to give the support at Christmas? And I don't want to say forget about the people after that, but sort of, it's like a short-term help. Is that a real help?
Whether it is a short-term or long-term, whatever is classified, depends on how it's classified. If it does not dwell, if it doesn't permeate the intuition, then it is a temporary thing which does not persist. No two human personality do things with the same concept. Each one, depending on their maturity, they do things for one reason or the other. Therefore, it would be wrong to, on a spiritual level, categorize why they did what and how they did it. But one thing is certain. Whatever they have done, if it has brought pure joy and happiness on a spiritual level, on an earthly level, in reciprocity, which reciprocal activity is an intrinsic feature of the laws of creation, that particular personality will receive in like measure, here or hereafter, the effects of what his activities have caused. Which means if his activity has aroused that spiritual happiness and benefit, then in reciprocity, here or hereafter, that personality will also receive spiritual benefit. If it has aroused earthly benefit, that personality will also receive of a like nature. One thing, however, should stand out. If, however, in the giving or in the initiation of these activities, it was done calculatingly. When, however, the returns come, they will circle around him, but because they were not done with spiritual thoughts in mind, he himself may receive earthly benefit, but no spiritual benefit, because there is a gap which is created there. Whereas many human personality, their inner being of spirit, will wish to be involved in that which is of benefit spiritually.
Thank you for your answer, Gregory. It just reminds me your answer in many previous shows about you always have to look what lies behind it. What is the intention behind an activity? And if something is genuine, then the reward will be the equivalent of that. If it's not genuine, then again the reward will be equivalent to that. So and even if, as I've talked about, something could be of a short-term benefit, but that the word it is rare really is if there's a benefit, there's a benefit. So that's what it is. It's not about short-term or long-term. So you don't have to measure something like that. If a person gets a benefit, there's a benefit. So thank you for that. Dear listeners, you are listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program. Tonight we are doing the show from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. UK time, but our normal time is actually 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrusheen. And if you are interested in knowing more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, MESSAGE.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is Happy Christmas, the gift of love. Happy Christmas, the gift of love. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments. The number to contact us on our UK number, it is 07939 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And we're broadcasting on blessradio1.com. That's the number one, blessradio1, the number one.com. Also, we are on YouTube, broadcasting on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, again the number one, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can listen to the recording of this show the next day. Go again to youtube.com, type in the search box, Bless Radio 1, the number one, space, Grail Message. And space again, and then the topic of the show, which tonight is Happy Christmas, the gift of love. And also one other website, I just remembered it, of course. It is www.zeno.fm/blessradio1. Again, the number one there. Gregory, we said Jesus was called the King of the Jews, or maybe we didn't say today, but it has been said, we know from the Bible. And so my question there, Gregory, is, and yet we know the message of Christ has gone beyond that. So I just want to check, Gregory, when Jesus came, was he there to give the message only to the Jews, or how was it meant to be?
The expression Jew should not be tied specifically to a tribe. It should be those who, through their activities, have matured to a specific extent and are able to comprehend to a large extent the laws which govern all the activities in creation. That is what it's supposed to mean. However, this particular word Jew has been so condensed to belong to a specific group of people, and therein lies the distortion. Now, considering that the Lord Almighty is partial, it should not be forgotten that in the first instance, this was the same group who was granted through Moses the 10 Commandments, which 10 Commandments were supposed to help them in the first place, since through their inner maturing and through their inner suffering, at that time they bore the ability to be able to discern, to comprehend the words of Moses, and subsequently at the time of Christ, they were expected to have matured to that extent where they can easily understand what Christ spoke about. So that is how the Jews came about. However, as have been mentioned, whoever receives has the duty spiritually to make use of it, and then to pass it on to others. Only then will that particular personality be strengthened in that line of activity. What has happened, or in the past, which are facts, many who were granted the opportunity held very tightly to the gifts they were granted, did not make use of it for their personal maturing, and neither did they pass it on to others to mature. The repercussions are dire.
Thank you for this explanation, Gregory. Is definitely, I would say, many people would not have recognized that, how you said it about the different Jews, as a tribe. Most of the people would consider Jewish or religion, let's say, a group of people, a specific group, and rather than, you could say, the spiritual meaning of it, which is much wider than well, definitely not just limited to any tribe, but you could say a group of people who are, let's say, wanting to follow a spiritual path, or understanding, which maybe I'm not saying in the best way, but not in some narrow definition that I belong to the Jewish, let's not call it tribe, just the Jewish people, and so that is what it is limited to. I mean, that's what, it is limited to, but it's not. And recently I had a discussion, Gregory, with somebody saying it was similar to, the topic last week we talked about heaven and hell, and some people saying, oh, we have to be following, let's say, whatever religion it is to get into heaven. And then you're thinking, okay, what if somebody is not of that religion? It means they're excluded just because of, in quotes, their religion. And the person replied, well, if that is the case, why did the Almighty Creator, create those other people who are not of that religion, so they cannot now go to heaven? It's like why would He do that? And it sounds so ridiculous, that it can be this way.
Well, one wants to stress a particular point, that when one stresses the consequences, first, of not understanding aright what gift has been given, and as a consequence of that, the misunderstanding and the application of the misunderstanding. For instance, in the 10 Commandments, when it was talked about one's neighbor, do not take someone's farm or his goods or this or that. That was the time of Moses. Yet this same group, in moving from one place to the other, through Aaron, wanted to take that which did not belong to them for themselves, violating that same commandment which had been foreseen and therefore was passed on to them, such that they will not burden themselves. So the misunderstanding of a concept, the misunderstanding of the laws, the misunderstanding of the gifts which have been passed on to a group or to a particular personality, the consequences are dire. It was the same thing in the Advent, when the Lord Almighty gave His inborn Son to show the paths that human personalities need to follow in order to unburden themselves. But it was then turned again to something else. So one can see that it doesn't bring any profit spiritually. Only when these laws, only when these gifts, like you rightly said, the gifts of love, every gift that is granted to the human personality must be used in accordance with the will of the giver. In this case, the giver is the Lord Almighty, through whom power is passed on to you, through whom creation came into existence, through whom you yourself came into existence, and through whom and through whose power you strive to use to ensure your personal maturity. So it becomes very clear that the human personality must struggle, must strive to understand aright that which has been granted to it, else that which has been granted to it, in misunderstanding it, becomes their own judgment.
Thank you again for that answer, Gregory, and just want to just add again, because how important it is to have a spiritual understanding rather than the literal earthly understanding, because just going back to what we've just talked about, let's say being a Jew, let's say you're a man, you have to be circumcised, you have to not eat pork, or whatever are the regulations with the Jewish religion, let's say. However, the reality is those rules and regulations are not what makes you the Jew. What makes you the Jew is the spiritual, let's say, following of the rules, if I can say. And those rules are the laws of nature, not the, let's say, whatever circumcision, whatever it is, eating this, not eating that, whatever those rules are, that is the earthly, but that's not really it. The real one is the spiritual thing. And of course, being on the earth, we can't help but focus on the earthly rather than the real, let's say the crux of the matter, which is the spiritual. So somehow, Gregory, we have been deflected or distracted, I'm not quite sure what exactly is the right way to say, in our directions or our focus, let's say, in our life, how to live our life and how to treat our fellow man, a human being. Somehow we get stuck with these labels and divide everybody up rather than unite as a fellow human being. Now, just to emphasize that, Gregory, so we said the word the King of the Jews, and obviously when Jesus came, the Christians, you could say, were the next group that came about. And let's say they're more open in their way of seeing things. I'm being very general, so I have to be careful about what I'm saying here, because every group can be different. So, what I want to ask Gregory, did Jesus let's say, meant for a religion to form out of his teaching, or was it meant for just everyone?
It's very clear that the teachings of Jesus were meant for whoever wanted to improve themselves spiritually, that longing to improve themselves spiritually. It has nothing to do with the limited understanding, or with the blocks or the concentration of people who wanted to interpret it in a particular way. It has nothing to do with that. Actually, his teaching, basically, in the Lord's Prayer in which he gave, in the parable in which he gave, can be seen very clearly. The simple expression, love thy neighbor as thyself, that has nothing at all to do with any so-called limited concept. Thy neighbor is thy neighbor. Show him all the consideration as you will show yourself. That alone shatters the so-called concept of religion.
Thank you for that, Gregory. I've got a question from a listener. It came earlier on, but I only saw it just a few moments ago. It was when we were discussing, Gregory, about the, let me just see, about the Bible. Yes, when I was reading from Matthew about the birth of Jesus, and you mentioned that says it could be easily that we could get confused or with the text, because some things, let's say, exactly the word, I don't want to say contradictory, but they were just not clear, let's say, in the in the words that were written there. Sometimes it's well, let's say you said, I think if I put it a different way, there was a lot of information in those words, and it's quite possible to lose the focus of the actually important part of the text because of, you could say, you're reading a story, and but then there's something important there about the purpose, and we were talking about the mission of Christ there, which is he came to save mankind from sin, and then let's say that was what the most, let's say, the important point in that text. But there was other words there which maybe you could easily be distracted by if you are not focused. So my question is, Gregory, which the listener has sent in rather. He says, why did Jesus never write down his message?
Very clearly, at the time in which he lived, the example he sets is powerful enough for those who live like children, filled with longing towards the ideal. The best teaching one can give is true example. With that stays forever. Now you might consider, oh, maybe he needed to have written this down, and then you have so many different interpretations. If those writings would not be so grossly distorted. But the firm examples which he puts there, through his firm examples, those who followed him, it's registered heavily, registered very well spiritually. The picture became very clear. It is that picture that they use in moving things from one place to the other. The so-called early Christians, what happened? They only spoke out of their personal conviction with the knowledge they have gathered from Christ. They spoke out of their personal conviction. It wasn't that they read it, but they lived the life. And in living the life, trying to do what their master had done, they were able to break grounds and move forward. Now, you would have asked, maybe it would have been better if something were written down. One is the pen. The other one is the personal conviction. The personal conviction won the hearts. It's not that it was written because it was written in the Bible or that time, the writings, and that is why this happened, that happened. No. He showed a living example of how man should proceed with his life. Such examples, you cannot write them down. Only those who associate themselves with you, only those are able to understand it. In, for instance,
hello, Gregory? Are you there? We can't hear you right now. Gregory, are you there? I know you're not on mute, but somehow we can't hear you. Okay, I'm going to continue, listeners. I don't know what's happened with Gregory there. I have another question, which was, why did Jesus speak in parables? So I'm going to try and answer that. Basically, parables, it's like a storytelling, and it can be seen in multiple ways. Oh, Gregory, you're back?
Yes, I was surprised that...
Yes, we lost you. I could see you there, but I couldn't hear you. I don't know if do you want to continue where you were? Because I had another...
No, I had finished.
You had finished. Okay, that was good then. So you might have missed what I just said now, Gregory. I said Jesus spoke in parables. And I was going to answer this myself. Why did he speak in parables?
He spoke in parables, or what to us like children, when as a child you go close to your grandma or your grandpa and they tell you fables, and because of the simplicity of the way of the presentation, you long to hear this, and these fables sink into your inner self, and gradually, in due course, you can use those fables to understand the processes in nature, the relationships in nature, and how things work. In the same way, parables are vehicles through which you can pass information straight to the human spirit, in which gradually, as the person matures, he can use those parables to understand many other things. It is similar to literature, where you use all form of figures of speech which encapsulate the whole concepts that you wish to put across. These parables capture the essence of the meaning he intended to pass on to the listeners.
Thank you for that answer, Gregory. What it reminds me of is the parable of the prodigal son. What I mean is, the parables basically, you can get more than one, let's say, understanding or meaning. So let's say you can have even 3 different meanings. And for example, this a parable of the prodigal son, it could be referring to just, there's no names in the story as such, it's just characters. And it could just refer in general how, one should, let's say, behave in general, but it could also mean, a reference between, a reflection of what Jesus himself is going through with God the Almighty and himself, so God the Father and he, the Son, it could be read in this way. So there can be multiple meanings from these parables, Gregory. So, and then what my point is that when there's such multiple meanings possible or interpretation possible, can it not be confusing in this way?
Well, you said multiple meanings. I wouldn't say multiple meanings, but it could be used in different situations to convey specific concepts. So it doesn't mean it means A, at the same time it will mean B, and at the same time means C. One wouldn't use it that way. For parables are like figures of speech. There is this one, forgotten the name now, these figures of speech which many artists use to convey concepts. The parables are precise to a large extent in conveying specific concepts. In the case of the prodigal son, in the first case, you see a picture of someone who leaves one place in search or in quest of something. At the same time, he has talents. Then he goes wandering around. That picture stays with you. Having that as a foundation of a particular picture, later on, one can use it to understand, processes in life. So the parables are used to build the concept, the precise concept, which can be taken over to, different scenarios. But the key concept is there. It's like a representation, more like a picture.
Thank you. I'm going to read now, Gregory, some from Matthew chapter 22. I'm just going to find it, and verse 35 to 37. Let me just find it here. And it's titled The Greatest Commandment. It's even actually verse 34 of chapter 22. Hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question: Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. I'm going to stop there. No, actually I will continue because it seems quite relevant as well. And the second is like it. All the law. I miss. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So Gregory, the Pharisees were trying to catch Jesus out as usual, and I think they wanted to test if he knew the laws of the Ten Commandments from the Moses, and they thought, let's see if he can explain them. And then Jesus came up with something, let's say, quite a different, well, on the surface at least, and told them about love. And just to repeat that, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. Let's look at that, Gregory. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. So there are three things there, or three ways there. What is Jesus saying, or what does Jesus mean there, Gregory, when he says that? Love the Lord.
He was only repeating the first commandment in the 10 commandments. Basically, the 10 commandments talked about first the origin, the giver, and subsequently thy neighbor. So, those 10 commandments, when you sift them very carefully, only 2. First, the source of all power, and then one's neighbor. It was only a recite saying exactly the same thing. Very sadly, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they themselves never understood the commandments. Yet those who did not understand the commandments, because in their view or in their misview and narrowness, it was become so dense. They did not have any intuitive picture of what it meant when he said, thy neighbor. They thought, oh, we are Jews, and therefore, even within the Jewry, which they talked about, they had different strata. Some were supposed to be superior to others. Such categories, which they themselves did not understand, from such a distorted playground, they tried to ask questions, the answers which they themselves could not even understand. So when Christ gave that answer, which is so comprehensive, which could not be otherwise, they were surprised. So what he meant very simple. Precisely the laws given by Moses in the 10 Commandments was what he gave back and expanded on. By neighbor, he didn't say this person must be of the limited concept they themselves have formed. And that is why when he used the word, a priest came, went this way, a Levite came. These are the people who are supposed to understand the law and went the other way. Then came a Samaritan. At that time, the Samaritans were not even classified as knowledgeable. Who bound the wounds, did all the things he could for his neighbor. And then he asked them the questions of this tree. Who is his neighbor? Then it was their turn to answer, but they just left, which already explains that they never understood the laws which Moses gave to them. Had they understood those laws, then some of the things which they did initially, before Christ came, they would not have done it. They would have matured to such an extent that Christ didn't need to come. But they didn't understand it. So he came, and through his examples, he showed them how they should live.
Thank you for this reply and explanation again, Gregory. It really shows how far, our understanding can be. When we just somehow can't seem to see, the right. I don't want to say right hand. There's something so clear. Somehow the focus just goes away from what is the right understanding. I want to ask Gregory, are these people who are supposedly the scholars, if I can, or experts, is there some barrier that they have that they can't see? Okay.
They have. Most of the scholars are highly intellectual. That is, they observe externally and they draw their inference on the external basis. Only very few strive to understand the motives, the intention, or the intuition behind the intuition which initiated the expressions in nature, or the expressions of the human personality in its activities. It is the intuition that is the lever. Because you have the intellectuals or the scholars, whatever they care to call themselves, because of their personal inability to assess what lies behind it. What lies behind it in accordance with the laws of creation. What then happens is that interpretations are one-sided. That means they are looking at the physical expression, which are bound to the earthly concepts of time, the earthly concept of space, not more than that. Whereas what lies behind it, the intuition, the lever, is not considered. That is the one-sidedness. And it only tells you they are looking at a tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg, the greater part of it lies underneath it. So therein lies the challenge.
I missed that last, but the deeper part of the challenge, say that again, was under...
The tip of the iceberg is on the top. The greater parts of the iceberg lies beneath what meets the eye.
Thank you. Yes, I got that. Now, we come to the end of the show now, but I just want to end with this. The title tonight is Happy Christmas, the Gift of Love. And we've talked about love, we talked about Christmas, and the gift of love. So, I guess, Gregory, I want to say Jesus is the gift of love from the Almighty as the Messiah, as the Savior, to help mankind. And maybe I just want to ask Gregory, why would God send His love, and when He sent already many prophets, but why did He have to send His love as well? That's the person.
Very simply, you can only use or give what you have. You cannot give what you don't have. The intrinsic property of the Lord Almighty is to give and show the way. The best that He Himself could give was the intrinsic love. And that intrinsic love took on the form of a man and had the name Jesus. Through His very presence, He, as a man among men, showed the way, or showed how men should live through his personal example, how they should think in order to fulfill their tasks and return back home, their home which lies in paradise of man in the higher realms.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
There was no other thing that could be done further. Only those who follow his examples, who follow the concepts, like he gave in the Lord's Prayer, or like he did in his parables, only those who make use of that spiritually will find their way back home, else they are lost.
Thank you so much for your answer there and explanation again, Gregory. We now do have come to the end of our show tonight, listeners. Thank you for joining us, and hope you enjoyed the discussion. Gregory, anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing them a beautiful Christmas indeed, not merely in words.
Thank you for that. Dear listeners, from me, just to remind you that you can, to encourage you to pick up the Grail Message in the Light of Truth by Abrushin. In fact, there is a lecture in the Grail Message titled Christmas, which you may be interested to read as well. But we do encourage you to pick up the Grail Message so you can get the deeper spiritual understanding about life. You can examine it yourself and, investigate it. And if you are interested to know about the Grail Message or get a copy of the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, G-R-A-I-L, message, MESSAGE.com. For me, I also wish you a happy Christmas, and yes, may the blessing of this period come to you in the way the Almighty wishes it, and not in just our personal sort of enjoyment. It's really the deep spiritual experiencing. That's what this Christmas is meant to be all about. So again, I wish you all a great Christmas. All the best, everyone. God bless. Good night.